All right, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our July Grab a Coffee with session. I'd like to begin today by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we all meet today and pay my respects to the elders, past and present, and emerging. I extend that to any First Nations people joining us today. My name's Samantha Fletcher. I'm from Campbelltown City Council and am the chair of the Next Gen Committee through Local Government Professionals, New South Wales. Just a bit of housekeeping before we begin. Please ensure your mic is muted and note that we are recording this session. Please feel free to update your name on Zoom to your name and council so we can better connect with you throughout the session. We'll have some time at the end of the session to ask Todd some hot burning questions. So feel free to add them to the chat box throughout the session if you feel like it. Otherwise, please note them down and you'll have the opportunity to ask Todd directly. We'll also have some time at the end for you to do some connecting and networking with one another. So it's great to see so many of you online today. For anyone who's not a member of Local Government Professionals, I'd strongly encourage you to consider joining to being part of sessions like these and other great professional development opportunities. If you are interested, Brooke is on the line, so I think Brooke is on camera there. Feel free to connect with Brooke or myself or any other members of the Next Gen Committee. I'd now like to introduce our guest speaker for today, Todd Clarke, Director of City Services at Randwick City Council. Todd has worked at Randwick for over 17 years, starting on the back of a truck in waste collection before moving into a student engineer role. Todd now leads a large workforce in the oversight of council operations and asset portfolio. Given the nature of Todd's career and journey, his current role, he is passionate about people, mentorship and staff development. So welcome, Todd.
Thank you, Samantha. Thanks for the invitation. It's great to be here.
No, thank you. Great to have you on board. So our session today is really honing in on building a career in local government. So could you start by sharing a summary of your career journey to date?
Yeah, I think you did a pretty good job there in that opening statement, but I started sort of straight out of high school I was a student engineer, so I have a background in engineering, civil engineering. So straight out of school, jumped into the Bachelor of Engineering at UTS. But whilst I was doing that, I found a really convenient employment on a waste collection contract at Randwick as a contractor. So the ability to be able to work from like 3 or 4 in the morning till 7 or 8 and finish and go to university was really appealing. So I did that for a few years. And I thoroughly enjoyed that. It's one of the best jobs I've ever had, just getting an understanding of the workplace and being around all different cultures and opinions, and in any operations can be quite polarizing. So it sort of was becoming a little bit harder to do that at the back end or halfway through my university career. So the opportunity come to move in-house as a student engineer at Randwick. So I by pot luck found the ad in a local paper to jump in-house, and I took it up and was lucky enough to come in, and I've been at Randwick ever since. Pretty much straight out of school, always worked in Randwick, whether it's on the contractor side of the fence or internal, but for the last 17 years now in-house, and moved through various positions in mostly operations and assets, in varying engineering-based roles and leadership roles. So sort of diverse in a sense, but very undiverse in a way as well, being just a singular employer.
No, it's good trajectory. So as a director, what does your typical week look like for you now?
Geez, it's a good question. It depends on the week, regardless of, and I say that largely as a director, my work life revolves around the councillors and managing that sort of political space with my fellow executives and the general manager. But 90% of our time is people, whether it be a councillor, a stakeholder, internal staff member. So when I say it revolves around council, we have council meetings, council briefings, and I'm sort of positioning the business units that I'm responsible for around those cycles and the delivery things we need to do for that. So a general week, we're definitely not short of working hours. As a director, I miss greatly my flexi time as a non-director, but I would more so during the day, focusing on staff and stakeholders in various support mechanisms and getting through our delivery program, and then probably moving later in the afternoon to evenings, focusing on councillors in the political space and again the stakeholders. So it's probably, as a director, a work week's less technical, I would say, and more strategic, which is sort of harder for myself, being a very operational person. But yeah, you're less in the weeds, so to speak, and more at operating at a higher level, which has its pros and cons. But yeah, that would be a typical week for a director, all working around councillors and people.
Yeah, lots of challenges, I imagine. So what do you value about local government that has led you to pursue a career in the sector?
So personally, once I jumped in-house to local government, it was most definitely the people that I was working with, and I know we'll talk a bit more about that later, but the opportunities that I was afforded in local government through mentorship, and people just caring about my development was a massive, pretty much, if not the main focus, one of the most polarizing focuses to keep me in local government. But side to that, so being in an engineering space, the diversity in things that we got to do in engineering, and the projects that we got to work on. We were just sort of talking about before the session started, working in Randwick. The places I got to work, the coastal environments, the buildings, the sporting fields, you name it, the diversity was always there. And I thought, we're not always doing, your big scale projects, but you're doing a lot of community oriented, community focused projects at a rate of knots, which gives you a constant sense of satisfaction and perspective. And I really, I found that appealed to me a lot. So having the direct access to change things in the community, in varying roles, it's always been the same, whether I was a student or as a director, you still have that same access, and you still get, even though don't technically get to do things anymore or deliver projects, I still get to see the benefit of things being realised, and that gives you that constant sense of, wouldn't say necessarily achievement, but satisfaction.
Yeah.
So that's highly appealing. And then I work where I live, just as it's not for everyone, and it's a topic that's often hotly debated. I actually had a mentor that would always tell me not to work where I live, and they would, in my best interest, said something, working too close to home it burns you out. People are always trying to get things from you, but I was very close to that mentor, and they're only looking after my best interest. But I disagreed. I love working where I live. I hate driving, for one, so I'm pretty spoiled in that regard. But growing up in the area and now working in the area, I think I've been able to forge really strong relationships with stakeholders that support the community. So it's not as in the sense that you're doing favours for people or things like that, but you can often be a conduit to navigate someone's customer experience journey and be an understanding for someone to understand local government. I had another mentor that always used to say that, local government it's the closest level of government to the people, but the level of government that people know the least about. We're not really in the paper state. It's always state government or federal government, and local government's an easy government to just, use as a punching bag. So I found being local as an opportunity to bridge that gap in some respects. So it never really worried me. So I've done it for that 17-year sort of time period, and I would move if I had to, but I couldn't imagine being anywhere else, to be honest.
No, that's great. So we spoke about it previously, and I know that you're very passionate about mentorship and staff development. Can you talk a little bit about your mentorship journey and give some advice to those online today about receiving and becoming a mentor?
Yeah, I'm very passionate about mentoring. So I don't think I would be a director. I'm 35 myself now. I don't think I would be a director. I think I'd become a director at 30. Will I be a director at all, or a director that at that age, if it wasn't for like strong polarizing mentors, people that cared about as I said earlier, cared about my development and my growth. I took that personally, not professionally. I when I first started, I couldn't imagine that there were people that were so invested in how I turned out and my progression. And as personally, I've always thought that I wanted to pay those people back. If you're willing to invest in me, and we might have only just met and I don't really know you, but as a young engineer, as a young employee, no matter what it may be, I always thought, I thought it was, not strange, but it really took me back, that people were willing to do so much to try and push me through opportunities. And it wasn't always easy. So that mentoring was often being thrown in the deep end for things, or not being ready, and sort of, you'll be right, have a crack and see how you go mindset. But I loved it, and I was most definitely at Randwick in an environment where making mistakes was completely fine, as long as you don't make the same one twice. I kept getting told, but making mistakes was completely fine, and learning and being guiding through certain challenges and opportunities. So I had mentors immediately, and they weren't necessarily like the general manager or a director or anyone like that, but just different people in the organization. I had a director from a whole different department at council that I didn't actually know was a director when I was a student engineer, sort of so naive and green. But there was a lady director who just always took an interest in how I was. And she would always come past my desk to see how I was going and what's happening, and little things like that, So there's sort of indirect mentoring and direct mentoring. I had many indirect mentors, but then I had my first mentor. I come on as a value add, essentially as a student engineer, obviously the data type scenario where you're just there to support and punch numbers in spreadsheets, and it was a genuine assistance for this employee that I had been brought on to assist as a team leader. But the minute I started, this bloke he wanted to get rid of me essentially into another team that he thought I'd be better suited. So the data entry style, he thought, is not going to progress my future. So the minute I started, he was, how can I get you into another department? How can I show other departments what you can do? And that took me back. Like the fact that I knew how much I was, just the position was helping this person, all they could think about was getting me into another team to help my career. So that set me off, that introduction to local government, and that sort of connection that really put me down a path that I thought this is where I want to end up. And then eventually I just from the advice that I give students, we have a really sort of decent student engineering program at Randwick, and is to keep yourself relevant. So I think my end of the bargain from a mentorship and being mentored was keeping yourself relevant. And it's not from, pardon the language, being a brown nose or just, teacher's pet type scenario, but showing that people can trust. I thought that's how I can pay them back, that they can trust me, that they'll ask me to do a task and I'll put my 110% into it and I'll deliver the task. I don't have to worry about it. So that element of trust, and then turning up for them with integrity, that's what I could do in that mentor relationship. And through doing that, and I say that, keep yourself relevant in those regards to students, because I find just through going through different mentoring programs and mentoring staff that, sometimes in this generation, entitlement can creep in, and having that over sort of heightened sense of entitlement, which I understand, and it just is what it is, and it's human nature. But I've always had kept an imposter syndrome, to keep myself humble. The closer I get to a position, the further I feel away from it, just to make sure that I'm not getting ahead of myself, and staying humble so they can trust me. And I think just through having that mindset, I've pushed through probably a little bit earlier into career positions than what I should have. And from a mentoring perspective, as I have got through those positions, often being young, so I started at Randwick when I was about 18 or 19 in-house. I've often found I was the youngest person. That excuse is running out quickly now. But I found that I was the youngest person in the room in many conversations, many management teams. And as I progressed through the ranks, I was always the youngest leader in the room, or the youngest coordinator, youngest manager, youngest director, and that comes with an element of complication, I'd say. But I've learnt to deal with that by, again, sort of staying humble, never forgetting where I come from, like always realizing I learnt a big part of who I am on the back of a truck, and being able to deal with people. But I've maintained mentoring relationships with people that work under an org chart for you. So I'm very strong on mentoring doesn't follow an org chart.
Yes.
So my mentors still to this day, my strong mentors work technically for me.
Yeah.
And that's a very, can be quite a tricky mindset sometimes. And it can be, if I put myself in some of those mentor shoes, that might not be easy either.
Yeah.
So I appreciate that relationship, but I've always maintained, as a role of a director, it's for me is to support people achieving an outcome. So I'm still supporting my mentor. The hierarchy of things doesn't really come into it for me. I still go to them for advice. I still go to them for counsel. I still go to them as the expert. And my job is to really support them and make their life as easy as possible. And there has been times where it's been complex and hasn't been straightforward, but I think I've worn people down over the years to show that my heart's in the right place in maintaining that relationship. But I found that very early on. I had there was a senior project manager who was a guru in the industry, and I was a punish to this person as a student. I just never let them rest. And then all of a sudden I was their coordinator, and I really could sense that sort of friction in the relationship. But I learned there that, this person's the expert. This person's done a lot for me. Don't use my position in a negative context, and really try and, help that person get what they're trying to achieve. And over time, I've used that, implemented across the board. So it's imperative, mentorship. I solely think I'm in the position I am because of mentoring, but it's on both sides of the fence. I've allowed myself to be mentored and follow orders and understand when I agree and disagree with those orders and how that can help me grow as well. Like, it's not about it's just agreeing with how you're being mentored or whatever, but respecting the fact that someone can take the time to invest in your future. That still to this day resonates very strongly with me. I always want to pay that person back. And I'm lucky enough now to work directly with my general manager as a director, who started me off on that progress too. He's very big on mentoring. He's back at Randwick, and I can see from a different angle now how he's focusing on other staff coming through, and he's got people in his sites, how he can bring them through. So it's just I'm very passionate about it. It's a wonderful thing. And I think it's how we essentially change local government for the better in the future.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it has that direct correlation with your career development as well, and identifying and bringing to light people's values. So no, that's great. Would you have any advice to, members online today that might not have those connections or might not have as supportive or forthcoming people in their organisation to be mentored?
Yep. You've got to, in some instances, go looking as well. So that you don't have to have a mentor that works inside the organisation. Even now, currently I've found probably a mentor that works in the private industry from a different context.
Yeah.
So a whole different mindset, a whole different way of thinking. More as I moved into a direct role, I've found that the expertise are required in a different way that I'm probably used to or trained through as an engineer. So I've found someone outside of the industry, in the sports industry, funnily enough, but from a director perspective.
Yeah.
So don't wait. Like that same bit of advice, keep yourself relevant. If you pick up the phone and ring someone and ask just a general question because you respect the way that they do something, or you've found interest in the way that someone else does something, often that's enough, and then developing that relationship. So keeping yourself relevant. Don't just wait for someone to tap you on the shoulder and say, I'm going to be your mentor. It doesn't actually happen like that. It's developing a relationship based off trust.
Yeah.
But I would say, don't be afraid to just pick up the phone and ask. Like, if you're even to the extent, if you're a student or a young person coming through, and you find there's another general manager and another council that the way that they do things appeals to you, is just giving them a phone call and asking them for a coffee, or asking them for 10 minutes or 15 minutes at a time. Like, I've been lucky enough to be around a couple of our general managers, and through LG Professionals, the GM and directors sessions that are facilitated. There's so many people out there that will help, and there's really good people in this industry. And I would strongly recommend, do not be afraid to pick up the phone and say, can we have a coffee, or can I catch up? Can I come to you for 10, 15 minutes or whatever it may be? And what you just naturally doing is just you're planting a seed in that person's mind that you're interested. If you're willing to go out on that limb, that you're motivated, and you do not know what relationship that will strike
Yeah.
for in the future. So it doesn't necessarily just have to be in the department that you're working in. It could be another department. It could be another business. It could be a contractor. Like, this is the thing with it. You don't want to blur the lines, I get, but you may work with a contractor that you think, oh, that person operates really well, whether it be for people management or technical expertise. You know, I've said I had this conversation with my staff, or one of council staff should say this morning. You're not agreeing always with the mentoring that you're getting. It's okay.
Yeah.
Or the direction or the management direction that you're getting. I've found disagreeing with things helps not disrespectfully, but just in the back of my mind help me to grow in the way I would like to do things, and just keeping that mental note of the change that I would make. But if your integrity at a business doesn't line up, or your values at a business don't line up, it's time to go. Don't sit around and fester and you know, essentially become disgruntled. It's not good for your well-being. If you feel that, you know, the direction or the mentorship that you're not getting is suited to you and it doesn't align with your values, you've got to go. You got to leave the place you're in, and that's purely a personal recommendation for your well-being, because there are places out there, and that's okay as well. It's better to do that, I would say. There's places out there that you will find it, especially in this market. You know, it's an employee's market when it's very hard to get people in certain positions. So you've got choice. Find something that aligns with your values, and you'll find a mentor out there. You just got to put yourself in the position.
Great. No, that's great. Thank you, Todd. So you've had a pretty impressive career journey at Randwick. Do you feel there's more benefit in staying in a singular council and developing yourself upwards? Or do you think there's value added from moving between councils to gain experience and exposure?
Yeah, to be honest, either way, obviously, I think, you know, I've got an element of luck in my career journey as well, in being in the right place at the right time. When I mentor students, I mentor from the perspective, because of the opportunities that may come quicker, is diversity most definitely doesn't help. Like, so I'd be lying in consideration of my journey, obviously being at the one place. I would still be lying if I said, you know, experience, lived experience, worked experience, diversity in roles doesn't hurt, you know. So
Yeah.
Moving through different industries, councils, as long as there's reasonable time periods between those movements, and it's not every 2 minutes you're at a different place, there's red flags there. But I'd be lying if I said that wouldn't be productive, because it just develops you know, new ways of doing things. I would say, and I do say to people, I perceive one of my weaknesses potentially is the fact that I've only been in the one spot, albeit that I've moved through probably 6 or 7 different roles at Randwick, both operational, both professional, you know, in different levels of management. I've had diversity in the structure of local government. I'm conscious that my weakness could be that I'm only been in the one spot, and Randwick's way is the only way that I know.
Yeah.
So I try and mitigate that risk through being active in LG professionals and going to conferences, and really one thing that I really attest to and that I feel comfortable doing is stakeholder relations. And so if I can latch onto someone, they're mentoring or just a stakeholder relationship, or as I said, someone completely with a different mindset, I do love that. I do like speaking to different groups, different community organisations, different levels of government, to broaden my horizons or broaden my way of thinking. But like I mentioned before, what has worked wonders for me is attending the GM directors forums, and just seeing some of the issues that are going on across councils. I find in one sense, all councils do things the same, but in another sense, there are polarising issues that hit different councils differently. So I try and mitigate the fact that I've only been at the one place by trying to branch out my thinking. But I wouldn't say moving around is a bad thing. I'd probably say that would really solidify experience and diversity of thought.
Great. Looking back over the last 17 years in your local government career, is there anything that you would have done differently if you could do it over again?
Like, in consideration of probably what I just said, probably not. Like I do, I've still pinch myself every single day. As I mentioned, I've constantly keep that imposter syndrome. I've been a director now for 5 years, and that's the longest time frame I've ever been in a position in council. Generally every sort of 2 to 3 years I've moved around.
Yep.
So this is the longest time I've been in a position. So I'm conscious of, I do believe strongly in having that learner mindset, because it keeps you hungry, keeps you open to new ideas, not set in your ways. So I still pinch myself every day that I'm in this position. So I probably wouldn't change it. I'd be lying if I said I would. But I am conscious that there are other ways to get to where I am. It's not the only way.
No, it's great to hear. And I suppose last question before we get into the question session. The local government sector itself has shifted over the last couple of years with the likes of remote working, with COVID, and the types of opportunities that are now available and the types of jobs available. What changes and challenges and opportunities do you expect to see over the next 5 years for the local government workforce?
Yeah, I suppose on the flip side of that, in terms of change, I think there's certain things that will always remain the same with local government, which I've learned coming through different management styles and different managers and different general managers and directions and the like. There's a lot of consistency in the way we do things, and I think the core fundamentals of local government in serving the customer and how we serve the customer will remain the same.
Yeah.
But in saying that, it's the expectations, I believe, of the customer will shape local government over the next 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And COVID's kicked that journey along drastically. I think I can't remember if it was at LG Pro or another organisation where it was a session where they said technology has moved 10 years because of COVID, and it wasn't supposed to be that quick, but it has pushed the technological experience for everyone along 10 years further than what we expected. So the way the community interacts with our services. So whilst the services and the fundamental services remain the same, the way the community interacts will definitely be different. So we need to be cognizant of the way we work, the environment, climate change, resources, external forces, all of those things in local government and how we interact with the community.
Yeah.
Everyone will always want their bin picked up. Everyone will always want the parks mowed, the DAs approved quickly. But the expectation level and that service and the experience will change in the next 4 to 5 years. So from a workforce planning perspective, that is complex. So it's imperative that we have strong HR relations and an eye for the future in workforce planning to get that right, because we all know what it's like. No matter what department you work in, the community wants something done tomorrow, no matter what it is. At Randwick, we've got 126 unique services, and all councils are the same. You tell me a business in the private industry that has that many different types of things they need to do on a day-to-day basis. Yeah. So we're working in a complex environment. That's another reason why I love local government. It's not sort of singular. We have all these different touch points. How do we do those 126 different services better than we did it yesterday? Yeah. For the community expectation? That's where I see local government going in the next few years, and knowing around, it's not necessarily remote working, but it's adaptive to that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's exciting times.
Hi, Todd and everyone else. It's Mary Vincent. I'm one of the facilitators at LG Professionals. I just want to ask you mentioned earlier, it's somewhat of a deviation from the theme of mentoring, but given that your progression through council, you mentioned earlier that you don't technically get to do things a lot. Yeah. How are you able to resist getting operational rather than strategic at times?
That's a really good question. It's something that I struggled with the most, moving from sort of a manager to director. And one of my mentors sort of beating into me. I tried to do too much as a director. I still was performing tasks as if I was a staff member or a manager, where you don't have the best value. I've learned as a director. Like, I find our key role is support and making sure, I still find that sense of, again, not achievement, but satisfaction in making sure departments have the right resources, the right wellbeing support, the right knowledge, the right access to information that allows them to do the things that I've been trying to do. It's very hard to let go. Being operational my mind was trained to deliver as quick as I could, as efficiently as I could, to move on to the next task. But it's now flipping the mindset. How do I get others to do that? And that's, from just really being available, being accessible, being engaging, getting out of the office. Don't sort of try and lead from behind a desk, and getting an appreciation, understanding for what people are doing and the pain points and the pinch points, and breaking down barriers, sorting things out when you need to, but not actually delivering the task itself, which I was trained to do, I suppose. It's a really tough mindset change I struggled to go through.
Okay, and may I also ask, with regards to mentoring, you mentioned earlier it's good to at times disagree with your mentor. For those who are trying to seek a mentor, sometimes we try and, well, I guess we're attracted to people who are similar to us.
Yeah.
What's one thing? What's one thing you think that people should consider when they're trying to choose a mentor?
You've got to get on. I would really look for that that connection. And that's my opinion. And obviously you might get a like being close to someone you completely disagree with may have its value too. But I found the establishment of trust through relationship as integral in every single relationship that I've had with a mentor. So then if you have a relationship where you can trust each other, that's where you can disagree with one another. Yeah. So there's obviously been some synergies in mindset or output or the direction that we're going or profession through most of my career. So there was that element of synergy. But no matter what mentor I've had, I've always thought, well, maybe I would do something like this, or maybe I would do respectfully, or I'm always conscious. And another sort of quote that I think, you stand on the shoulders of giants, like not just think, I'm going to rewrite the script myself, but what did they do? How could I have done it differently? Is there something I would have changed? Do I agree or do I not agree? And when the time has, because that's one thing with being in the directorship role, is now the times where I can implement those changes. Like those changes, I might not be doing the technical things or day-to-day tasks that I once was, but I'm now on the flip side in a position where I can implement the change that I saw previously. So to answer the question, I definitely start with where do you see some synergies and where do you think you can develop a relationship with someone. And the world moves, I think, on relationships and trust. So you don't know where that mentoring relationship will end up 20 years from now. Who knows? It doesn't have to be in the next 6 months, but they remember that, there was this kid, so to speak, that I used to talk to or that was interested 15 years ago. I wonder what they're doing now. Who knows? And
I think the advantage is trying to identify someone who does push you out of your comfort zone, that will challenge you. For sure. And as I said, more often than not in the early days, it was thrown in the deep end. Not all mentors have done that, but throw in the deep end, see how you go, because I was lucky enough to work in that environment where mistakes were okay, and I made some absolute pearlers. So that's another whole conversation. But just finding the right fit. Keep yourself open and you'll be right. Thank you.
Great. Anyone else on the line, feel free to unmute yourself and turn your camera on if you feel comfortable, if you've got any questions for Todd.
Hey Todd, how you going?
G'day Russell, how are you, mate?
Yeah, good, thanks. Hey, something that the network are always talking about is how we sort of attract and retain young people. You've talked a lot about mentoring today, which is super interesting. What other things do you think are important for us to get young people into the sector and then keep them here once they're in?
Yeah, another really good question. It's a whole array of things. So flexibility, in a sense, like we are going through an element at Randwick at the moment where we're revisiting what that actually looks like, and when I say flexibility, it's not just work from home, like that's not just what flexibility means, but I think purpose, giving people purpose, not just a day job. It will keep people in a role for a longer period than what they normally would. But then being, I suppose, financially competitive too. You can't go past that at the moment with the cost of living, you know, the external pressures that people are facing, you know, rate rises, you know, just you name it in that space. So when your competitor can pay probably a bit more than the local government, you've got to offer a diverse toolkit for keeping people in the industry. Sometimes we can't compete, I would say, because money is everything to some people, and that's okay. But if you can provide, you know, reasonable competition from a pay pack, flexibility, and that, which doesn't just mean work from home, but a whole host of different flexibility options and purpose. See that, and that one of my best mates works in a tier one construction firm, and he's a international consultant for that firm, and I see the lack of, he gets paid, you know, astronomical wages, but I can see the lack of flexibility and the burnout and the impact that it has on his family. Great job, he works hard, high work ethic, great integrity, but it's not for me. And that's a personal, I suppose, mindset. But you know, if we can have a bit of balance, and it will be, in terms of that last question, the next 4 to 5 years, I think it swings and roundabouts. I think local government is definitely going to be an employer of choice in general, in knowing what we can do and what we can achieve. And I think that the shiny state government bouncy ball eventually will wear off, and it'll come back in the future probably. But I think local government will get the benefit of that in the future. So yeah, a whole host of things, but probably cliche purpose, but you can't go away from being competitive financially as well.
Yeah, thank you. I saw something on LinkedIn this morning. It's like a stupid little meme thing that said, the only people that will remember you staying late, answering those emails and doing that extra work are your kids.
100%.
Like in 20 years. Like it was just a really nice little simple
100%.
reminder that like there's always work and it always feels like it needs to get done right now. But yeah, who is actually noticing? And
mate, I couldn't agree more. Honestly, there's been a really unfortunate incident that's happened with one of our employees a couple of weeks ago, who lost a child, unfortunately. And speaking with him, he just said, you know, your family is all that matters. That's it. There's nothing else. And we can get caught from a mental perspective in the bubble of our workplace, but you know, family is everything. So, you know, I couldn't agree more. You know, my journey is a personal journey, not professional. But from the work from home experience, I could see I've got a 7-year-old son, an 8-year-old daughter, and most definitely my son hated in the end me working from home. Hated. My daughter, you know, she sort of copped it a bit, but that's just a personal thing, and how you go. But your family's everything. You know, you're not going to put in the workplace if you're not happy in the family life. And so yeah, I couldn't agree more, Russell, on that one.
thank you.
Thanks, Russell. Do we have any other questions?
Someone put something up in the chat, but I did miss it. I couldn't.
They did, and I did miss it as well. So
Yeah,
I
sorry
might
about
get Brooke if you.
It was me. I asked a question, and Caitlin from Lake Macquarie. So what I might do is I'm trying to get her back on the line, but haven't had success with that. So I will get her question to you because it's on the recording as well. But my one was, Todd, my one was, how did you go about your mentorship? Did you select someone, or did someone actually say to you, hey, this person would be great to mentor you? Like, how did you sort that out? Did you do it on your own behalf, or was it given to you through an association or your workplace?
A bit of both. Initially, it was sort of people taking me under their wing, just informally. But then as I got into the business and got a bit more aware of the opportunities out there, then it was finding mentors. Most definitely the IPWA as another organisation helped me immensely from an engineering perspective, and being able to speak to people about different ways of doing things and learning and growth. And now, similarly, as I probably moved out of the sort of non-technical role myself, LG Professionals doing a similar thing. And you know, I remember just sitting next to a CEO of Georges River that I'd never met before, and just having those incidental conversations. Just the value, like little things were stuck in my mind from having that conversation. And now I feel that I can speak to that person or call that person and have a chat So it's a mix of everything. As probably the further I've got down the line, it probably becomes a bit more clinical and finding and being placed. Earlier on, a bit more informal. It's just being in the position to be mentored, and like, so people understand this employee will have a crack if I ask for help, and then you develop the relationship.
Thank you.
Great, thank you. Well, I would say that's going to conclude our formal session for today. So a big thank you to Todd. This session has been so valuable. And for everyone online, this has been recorded and will be available on the LG Pro resources online, so members can access this going forward. This is concluding our recorded session. So LG Pro will turn off our recorded session now. We do have a little bit of time for some informal networking. So if you feel comfortable to, you're more than welcome to turn on your camera, turn off your mic, and just have a chat with everyone online very casually.